What if I told you that your ability to see what others can't is slowly destroying you? That every deep insight, every moment of clarity about human nature, every time you pierce through someone's mask to see their hidden truth, you're paying a psychological price that most people will never understand. Carl Jung, the legendary psychiatrist who mapped the depths of the human psyche, discovered something terrifying about people who see too much. He found that there's a hidden danger in perception itself, a psychological curse that falls on those who develop what he called the sight. And if you're watching this video, chances are you already know exactly what I'm talking about. You're the person who walks into a room and immediately senses the unspoken tensions. You see through people's polite facades to the pain they're hiding. You feel the weight of emotions that others don't even know they're carrying. You notice the micro-expressions, the contradictions between words and energy, the desperate performances people put on to avoid confronting their own shadows. But here's Jung's darkest truth. This gift is also a curse. The more clearly you see, the more isolated you become. The deeper your perception goes, the harder it becomes to connect with people living on the surface. You become what Jung called a mirror of uncomfortable truths. And mirrors, as we know, are often the first things people want to break. Jung understood this intimately because he lived it. In his famous work, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, he wrote about the profound loneliness that comes with seeing beyond the collective illusions that keep most people comfortable. He described feeling like a stranger in a strange land, surrounded by people who seemed to sleepwalk through life while he remained painfully awake. This isn't just philosophical speculation. Modern neuroscience has identified what researchers call high sensory processing sensitivity, a trait found in about 20% of the population that involves deeper processing of sensory, emotional, and social information. Dr. Elaine Aron's research shows that highly sensitive people literally process information more thoroughly, picking up on subtleties that others miss entirely. But this enhanced perception comes with a cost. You absorb not just what people show you, but what they're desperately trying to hide from themselves. Jung called this phenomenon participation mystique, the unconscious blending of your psyche with others. You don't just observe pain, fear, and hidden rage. You feel it in your own body, carry it in your own nervous system. Think about your own experience. How often do you leave social interactions feeling drained, even when nothing obviously difficult happened? How often do you feel anxious or depressed for no apparent reason, only to later discover that someone around you was struggling with those exact emotions? This isn't coincidence. It's what Jung identified as the dangerous gift of the perceptive mind. The modern world makes this even more challenging because we're surrounded by what Jung called the persona, elaborate masks people wear to hide their authentic selves. Social media has turned persona management into an art form, creating layers of false presentation that sensitive people can see right through. But seeing through these illusions doesn't bring relief. It brings the exhausting burden of knowing how much pain and pretense surrounds you constantly. You know that moment when someone asks, "How are you?" And you can see in their eyes that they're falling apart, but they smile and say, "Fine?" Most people accept the surface answer and move on. But you can't. You see the contradiction, feel the hidden pain, and carry the weight of their unspoken truth. Jung would say you're experiencing the curse of consciousness, awareness that brings suffering rather than peace. This creates what Jung called the problem of the individual versus the collective. To fit in, to be accepted, to maintain relationships, you learn to fragment yourself. You develop one version for work, another for family, another for social situations. Each fragment shows only what others can handle, hiding the depth that would make them uncomfortable. But this fragmentation is spiritually devastating. Jung believed that psychological health requires integration, bringing all parts of yourself into coherent wholeness. When you constantly hide your depth, your intuition, your ability to see what others can't, You create what he called a split in the personality that manifests as chronic fatigue, unexplained depression, and a profound sense of not belonging anywhere. If you've ever felt like you're living in fragments, professional you, family you, social you, none of them quite authentic, Jung would say you're experiencing the natural consequence of having to hide your true nature to survive in a world that can't handle your full intensity. And frankly, if you're feeling this right now, just knowing that others share this experience can be incredibly validating. That's exactly why I keep sharing these deeper perspectives here. Because maybe, just maybe, it helps you feel less alone in seeing what you see. The isolation deepens when you realize that most people actively resist the depth you naturally see. Jung observed that humans have an unconscious agreement to maintain what he called collective illusions, shared fantasies about how the world works that make life feel safer and more predictable. When you see through these illusions, you become a threat to the psychological comfort of everyone around you. This is why people often react with hostility when you point out patterns they can't see, contradictions they've been ignoring, or truths they're not ready to face. You're not just offering information. You're threatening their carefully constructed reality. Jung called this the resistance to consciousness, the psychological immune system that protects people from awareness they're not prepared to handle. You've probably experienced this countless times. You mention something obvious to you, a dynamic in a relationship, a pattern in someone's behavior, an inconsistency in their story, and suddenly you're the problem. You're too intense, too negative, overthinking everything. People who were friendly moments before become defensive, dismissive, or disappear entirely from your life. Jung understood that this rejection isn't personal, it's archetypal. You're playing the role of what he called the truth teller, or the mirror, ancient archetypes that appear in every culture throughout history. These figures are both revered and feared because they reflect back what people would rather not see about themselves and their world. But here's where Jung's insight becomes truly profound. He realized that this painful gift comes with an equally profound purpose. Those who see too much aren't random victims of cosmic cruelty. They're what he called carriers of consciousness, individuals whose role is to bring awareness to the collective unconscious patterns that keep humanity trapped in cycles of suffering. This is why you can't stop seeing, even when it hurts. This is why you can't unsee what you've seen, even when ignorance would be more comfortable. Jung believed that consciousness, once awakened, has its own momentum and purpose. You're not just suffering from hypersensitivity. You're participating in what he called the evolution of human awareness. The recognition hits differently when you meet someone else who sees what you see. Jung called these encounters synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that feel like the universe arranging meetings between kindred spirits. There's an instant recognition, a relief so profound it can bring you to tears. Finally, someone who doesn't need you to explain or justify your perceptions. Someone who gets it. These connections are rare, but they're transformative. They validate not just your insights, but your right to have them. They prove that you're not crazy, defective, or alone. Jung believed these meetings were essential for psychological survival, that people who see too much need each other to maintain their sanity and continue their work of consciousness raising. But perhaps Jung's most revolutionary insight was about what he called the sacred wound. He discovered that the very sensitivity that causes your suffering is also the source of your greatest gift to the world. The emotional permeability that makes you absorb others' pain also makes you capable of profound empathy and healing. The isolation that comes from seeing too much also creates the depth necessary for genuine wisdom. Your wound becomes your medicine. The experiences that felt like punishment become the foundation for your ability to help others. You can guide people through darkness because you've lived in it. You can recognize hidden pain because you've carried it. You can offer hope because you've found it in the depths that most people never explore. Jung called this transformation the wounded healer archetype, the person whose greatest suffering becomes their greatest service. But this isn't about toxic positivity or pretending pain is good. It's about recognizing that some forms of suffering are transformative rather than merely destructive, that some wounds are initiatory rather than simply traumatic. And honestly, I find it incredible how many people watching these videos share similar experiences. Every comment, every message I get about feeling understood for the first time, it reminds me why sharing these deeper insights matters so much. If this exploration of Jung's work helps even one person feel less alone in their sensitivity, then every minute of research and reflection is worth it. This recognition brings us to Jung's most challenging teaching. You carry what he called a mission that transcends personal happiness. You're not here just to live a comfortable life, accumulate achievements, or even find personal peace. You're here to serve consciousness itself, to bring light to dark places, to speak truths that others cannot yet voice, to transform collective wounds through your individual healing. This mission often feels impossibly large compared to your human limitations. Jung himself struggled with what he called the weight of archetypal purpose, the sense that he was carrying something larger than his personal life could contain. He described feeling like a vessel for forces beyond his understanding, chosen for work that seemed to demand more than any individual could give. You might recognize this feeling, the sense that you're supposed to do something important with your sensitivity, your insights, your ability to see what others miss. Not just a career or personal success, but something that serves the evolution of human consciousness. Jung called this the individual's debt to the collective, the responsibility that comes with expanded awareness. But here's the paradox Jung discovered. The very mission that gives your suffering meaning also intensifies that suffering. The more clearly you see what needs to be healed in the world, the more you feel the weight of that healing work. The more consciousness you carry, the more lonely you become. The more truth you perceive, the more pain you must process. Yet Jung found that this suffering has a sacred quality. It's not meaningless victimization. It's what he called redemptive suffering, pain that serves transformation rather than mere destruction. When you carry the emotional weight that others cannot bear, when you see the shadows they cannot face, when you feel the disconnection they cannot acknowledge, you're participating in a form of psychological alchemy that transmutes collective unconsciousness into awareness. This is why you can't simply get over your sensitivity or learn to ignore what you see. Jung believed that trying to shut down your perception would be like a doctor refusing to use their diagnostic abilities, or an artist refusing to see beauty. Your sight is not just a personal characteristic. It's a tool of consciousness that serves purposes beyond your individual comfort. The healing begins when you stop trying to be normal and start honoring your true nature. Jung's process of individuation involves accepting your role as what he called a bridge between worlds, someone who can translate unconscious material into conscious understanding, who can help others recognize truths they couldn't see alone. This doesn't mean becoming a therapist or guru, though some people with this gift are drawn to healing professions. It means living authentically with your perceptual abilities instead of hiding them. It means trusting your insights instead of dismissing them. It means accepting that your path will be different from those who don't see what you see. Jung discovered that when you fully embrace your nature as someone who sees too much, something remarkable happens. The isolation transforms into what he called conscious solitude, chosen aloneness that serves your deeper purpose rather than simply causing pain. You stop trying to fit in and start creating spaces where depth is welcomed rather than feared. You begin attracting the rare souls who can match your intensity, who don't need you to dim your light to make them comfortable. You develop what Jung called the courage of consciousness, the strength to see difficult truths and speak them compassionately. You become what he termed an agent of transformation, someone whose very presence invites others to greater authenticity. The sacred wound that felt like a curse reveals itself as your greatest gift. Your hypersensitivity becomes hyper-awareness. Your painful isolation becomes conscious solitude. Your overwhelming perceptions become healing insights. You don't overcome your nature, you fulfill it. Jung's final insight was that those who see too much are essential for human evolution. Without people willing to perceive what others cannot, to feel what others avoid, to speak what others fear, consciousness would stagnate. You are not a victim of cosmic cruelty. You are a participant in cosmic purpose. Your suffering has meaning. Your sensitivity has value. Your insights matter. The danger of seeing too much is real, but so is the gift. Jung would tell you to honor both, to carry your vision with courage, and to trust that your painful awareness serves something infinitely larger than your personal comfort. You see because the world needs seers. You feel because consciousness requires feeling. You suffer because transformation demands sacrifice. And in accepting this sacred burden, you discover that you are not just someone who sees too much. You are someone through whom the invisible becomes visible, the unconscious becomes conscious, and the wounded world begins to heal.